Hello and welcome to another Game Nexus video. Today we're going to be taking a look at Dead or Alive, released in the arcades in 1996. This was the first game in the series, and of course here is your intro. And of course, this game was released back in 1996, and surprisingly enough, this was one of the first times that Sega actually licensed their hardware out to another company. And as you can see here, there are 8 characters, each with 3 different costumes available. Of course, we got Kasumi, Zack, Hayabusa, Bayman, Li Fang, Jann, Genfu, and Tina. Now, if you're familiar with the PlayStation version, you might look at this version and think it just looks a lot different. Well, because the PlayStation version is actually more or less a new version of the game that was built from the ground up, and the Sega Saturn or the Dead or Alive Ultimate version, which is more or less just a ported version of the Sega Saturn version, is what this game is. They were based on this version of the game. Of course, this game you see here was Tomonobu Itagaki's first Dead or Alive game. And this stage you see here, which I believe is called the L's Castle, which didn't appear in the original Dead or Alive 2, it later appeared in Dead or Alive 2 Hardcore. But I remember seeing that and I was like, hey wait, I remember seeing that in the original Dead or Alive, which at the time I had only had experience with the PlayStation and the Sega Saturn versions. This stage of course is in the Sega Saturn version, but since the Sega Saturn couldn't do the complex 3D graphics that the arcade could do, it had like some bitmap tricks that they used to make the game look good, but simply not as good as it does here. Now what you see here is this game does not run on the MAME emulator yet, since no 3D from Sega Model 2 works on MAME as of making this video. What I'm running this on is the Nebula M2 Emulator, which is a special Model 2 arcade emulator. And you'll notice this bridge in this stage is very reminiscent of some of the later Dead or Alive stages, which use the bridge for like story scenes, and of course, you can even fight on the bridge in Dead or Alive 4. And a lot of people, I remember when this game first came out, they're like, hey wait, that's Hayabusa, he was in Ninja Gaiden. And it was just a weird thing to see that character from a different game now be in this game. And one of the things I remember when I first played this back in the day is this was one of the like earliest games that I can think of that actually had characters who mouthed their what they were saying. There was a lot of times when you would have a fighting game or any game where the characters would talk back in the like I'd say this is like the 32-bit times, where the character would talk but their mouth wouldn't actually move. So I remember seeing that like in the PlayStation version. I was like, hey wait, the characters' mouths, they actually move, even though like in some of the 32-bit versions of this game, the lip syncing was more or less just the texture blinking black and skin color, but then again, it still looked like they were talking, nonetheless. And this Jann Lee music, as opposed to the PlayStation or ZN version, which is Dead or Alive++, which I'll be showing you in one of my upcoming videos, I always liked this Jann Lee theme, and I always thought it was a pretty cool theme, which of course it does show up in CD quality in the Sega Saturn version later on. But yeah, I always thought this was a cool theme for him, and this theme was never used again after it being used here. And there you see Tina doing the pro wrestling in the background there. That's one thing I noticed with a lot of these games. If you don't look closely at the little nuances in each stage, you don't notice like little details like that. Even in this stage here, there was a little thing that I'd seen like when I was playing this. If you see those people there, like said love and peace, and there was like a man and a woman, I just thought that was kind of cool. I'd never noticed that before playing it this time. And for the time, I honestly have to say that these 3D models look really good. If you're thinking why does this game look so good, and I do have to say the Nebula M2 Emulator does improve the game quite a bit. So there's really no comparison between how the arcade version would look and how this would look, since I'm running this game in 1024 by 768, and the original arcade resolution was only running at 496 by 384, which at the time actually was a fairly high resolution, considering a lot of your games were running by 320 by 240, so not too bad. And you got a full 60 hertz of a screen refresh rate, which wasn't all that common back in the day. And now here's another really cool stage here, the one that you fight Bayman in. Which, a lot of these stages you're going to see here are exclusive to the original version of Dead or Alive, and they didn't make it into the PlayStation or Plus arcade versions. And the one thing to really notice in a lot of these stages is there's a lot of stuff that moves, like those fans in the background, they move a lot. I don't know if I am able to show you in this this version of my playthrough here, but there are some numbers on one of the displays in the background that actually increment up and down. Actually, they're right there. If you see the replay, there's the numbers moving really quickly. It's just a really nice little touch to add into the game, which is I just like the little touches here and there, considering the home versions, of course, as I mentioned it once before, the 32-bit versions just didn't have the ability to do that because of the limitations of the hardware. And of course, the reason here I decided to play as Kasumi in her alternate outfit is in my update video I had done recently, I played with her in the original outfit. Plus, of course, you've seen her in the intro recently. And I remember when I first played Dead or Alive, and I had a friend of mine who's like, "Oh yeah, here's Genfu. They have to have the old guy in a fighting game," and I'm like. And I had to tell him, well, Genfu actually is a pretty cool character, and he does fight quite well. And one thing you will notice in this game that actually was dropped in just about all the later Dead or Alive games is you're on this big platform. The center is the safe zone, then you got the danger zone, which is a feature of the original Dead or Alive. And then outside of that, you can actually ring out in this game, which is a feature I believe unique to the original arcade version, because in just about every other version, the danger zone would just continue. Because, you know, it was a little bit more to render a platform and then render the ground. So, you know, that took a bit more 3D than any of the other versions were able to do. And plus, I guess they figured, like, most people would actually beat their opponent in the danger zone, because you've probably seen it happen a couple times here and there, but when your enemy hits the danger zone, they really get hurt really bad. Now, if you notice there's like a bit of a jump cut there, I can honestly tell, with all honesty, that I am pretty horrible at mirror matches. So it actually took me a while to beat Kasumi here, hence why the timer's gone up to like 7 minutes and something. Because I just kept getting destroyed by her. Plus, I can honestly say I'm not all that sharp at playing this game. I really hadn't played it in a while, so it was something that took a little bit of practice. But one thing to notice in this stage that you would later see in Dead or Alive 2 is this is actually the moving danger zone stage. You can actually see that the platform that we're on moves through the tunnel, which is something you don't see until like Dead or Alive 2, because in the Sega Saturn version, as you'll see in my next video, this platform is 100% stationary and it doesn't move at all. And that takes care of Kasumi there. And of course, I always like this this intro to Raido here. Always thought it was a really cool thing where the lightning strikes and he just appears. I think it's a lot more dramatic than some of the other games where he's just more or less standing there, so I always thought it was a nice little intro. And you'll see some of that lip syncing that I said there, and it has actually lip synced pretty well considering how old this game is. You wouldn't really expect a fairly old game to have decent lip syncing, which was even a problem in some of the more recent games, surprisingly. And that's one thing you'll notice about all the characters in the game is they all do like a specific quote when they finally win the game, and that was carried on to all three of the other versions of Dead or Alive 1 as well. I believe Kasumi holds on to the same one in all three versions as well, so whenever you hear her win, she'll do that same quote. And now this ending is another unique thing to this version of the game that wasn't in any of the other versions. I just find it cool that you actually have the rendered characters as opposed to like something CG, which in some of the versions of the console versions of the game, all you have is you see the credits and you see the intro of this game, but it's in CG since those games couldn't render it properly. And this music is something that in this version of the game, I only remember ever being seen here, because the PlayStation and Saturn versions used a different song, which you will hear. I just find it a pretty cool thing that gets you all hyped up to play the fight in the game. And while that's Dead or Alive the arcade version, I really highly recommend this version, especially if you can grab the ROM in the Nebula M2 Emulator. Really fun to play, a really exciting little game, quite a little bit limited with its only 8 characters, but hey, every series has to get its start. And I shall see you again in my next video where I will explore the Sega Saturn and Xbox revamp of this game. See you soon. Bye.
Game over.